I'm Jackie Lauricella, and during my time with Kara, I was inspired to break away from what my degree is in and what I was doing, which was sports medicine, and go into a more creative aspect of my life, which was photography, and just do a full lean into entrepreneurship and doing that. I was a client of Kara's about a year ago. I am a photographer, so I should photograph real estate, architecture, and people, like weddings and portraits and everything in between. So yeah, and that's new as well. So I started my business during the pandemic and the stay-at-home order. Technically, J. Lauricella Images has been a thing since like 2011.
Yeah, heck yeah. It was a pretty big break. I mean, we started out really just like working mindset, generally type of personal development type of stuff. And can you talk a little bit about that transition and that moment when you were like, I'm ready to make the shift in my life of all the mindset work, and now I'm ready to dive into entrepreneurship? Tell us about that.
I think I've always been a very self-aware person as far as I know it's important to me, and are the things that I want, and are the things that fulfill me. So that's never really been a downfall. But when I shifted and I was like, you know what, I can do this, it was less about self-awareness and more about belief in myself. So we really worked on that, and it cultivated into something really, really great, because now I'm like, I definitely can do this. And that was the shift, it was always a dream, like, oh, if you could do anything, what would you do? And I would always be like, oh, I'd be a photographer and work for myself and travel and do all that. And then I'm pretty sure there was a very blunt question somewhere like, why don't you do that then? And it was like, oh, because at first it was like, okay, you want to be an entrepreneur, like, what do you want to do? And I was like, I don't know, like, does not work for anybody else. Like, I just want to be bossed around. That was my big thing, my big takeaway. So there was a big shift when it was pointed out to me, and it was so funny because I like sent you this meme just the other day, but we had this conversation about how like, oh, I can't be a perfectionist, and I'm really not that hard on myself, because if I was, then I would be more where I wanted to be in life. And Kara was like, what? Like, are you hearing what you're saying out loud to yourself? So yeah, once I grasped that, I was like, oh, okay, I got this. I can do this for sure.
Yeah, I think one of the things I admired the most about you before we worked together, because we really kind of stumbled into a working relationship, right? Because I was working with your now fiance. And we were kind of just getting you on the phone to get your approval, really, to say like, let's make sure Jackie's on board. One of the things I admired about you then, and still admire about you, is you're just kind of like a badass bitch. Like, you've always performed at a high level with your, athletics and taekwondo, and then, pursuing the career that you wanted to in athletic training, and then really being very well respected in that. And when it got to the point when you were growing through so much in personal development that you were like, yeah, I'm ready to do this, you really took a lot of it on your shoulders. Like, we walked through some of the basic foundational things that get you there, but I think that it was your mindset. And I think it was the shifts in your mindset that you just talked about that we really, for all intents and purposes, our work together, I gave you the basics for the foundation of the business. Like, we didn't really work on that long term. I just gave you the basics and you ran with it.
Yeah, I think something that really helped when we were working together were the activities where we were chunking things up and like looking at bigger picture, because I always thought I was a big picture person and a long-term goal person, and like this and that, and it's like, okay, I can have fun now, but like I'm looking to the future. And anytime I wasn't, and I was being a little bit more hedonistic in my actions and being like self-pleasing, I like felt a lot of guilt and a lot of like, but doing those chunking up things and like core beliefs and getting down to like your why and your purpose and why does this trigger you? And why do you want to why is this important to you? Like that question being asked over and over. Okay, why is that important? Why is that important? That was so helpful because it, how do I word it? It like made me see that it wasn't necessarily goals that were driving me. It's like, oh, you don't have to be considered a driven person. You don't have to just be like going after goals. It can just be like things that you want and you're just making it happen because that's what's important to you. And I think that as an athlete, I started Taekwondo when I was like 8 and I didn't stop until I was 22. And I competed at such an elite level and I was competing hours and hours a day, 5 or 6 days a week for years. And it was just drilled into my head constantly, like everything that you do is for a greater purpose and you sacrifice now for what you want, but every day of your life doesn't have to be like that. And I think that that was like a really strong takeaway.
Yeah.
Because I was either feeling on top of the world and like I was chasing my dreams and reaching my goals, or when I like went to college, for example, and stopped competing. And then I was just like, wow, I'm such a lazy ball of nothing. And it was one extreme to another. And I think learning to kind of live, not necessarily in the middle, but just like, okay, I have really motivational and like days where I'm pushing, but I'm allowed to have a day or two where I relax, especially if my mental health is, you know, like being sacrificed, or like sometimes rest helps you reach your goal, and sometimes not kicking your own ass is a really good thing because everything else wants to kick your ass. So like you don't need to do it too. And I think that that was a big takeaway from our time together.
Really learning for you to accept the duality of those two natures that exist within you.
Yeah, exactly. Because I didn't think I could be one or the other. If I was lazy, I was just lazy, and that's what I was doing. If I was making mistakes and messing up, I was just a screw up. Like it wasn't, oh, you just had a bad day. There wasn't any of that, you know.
That's a really beautiful discovery. And I think one of the great things about having a conversation with clients years later or months later, in your case, we started to work together 2 years ago. We stopped about a year ago, is that I get to really see what you discovered. We get to actually see what the results are in your life. And I would love for you to share a little bit about what your result has been after going through the time that we spent together and then really continuing for the last year.
Yeah. So when I started working with you, it's almost really funny. It's like, you don't think that you're a stereotype when you're living a stereotypical lifestyle, but I have some master's studies in psychology and things. I'm like, oh my gosh, I was just a textbook, like former elite athlete. You know what I mean? Like I dealt with disordered eating. I dealt with high functioning anxiety and panic disorder. I believed that I was lazy if I wasn't just on my shit all the time. I was dealing with grief in a really weird way, just because I was a control freak, you know. And it's so funny because I look back and I'm just like, of course you are. Like, you know what I mean? Like what a way to just like fit onto one single page of a psychology textbook. That was great. But moving forward, it's like I would love to be able to be like, oh my gosh, Kara got rid of all my problems. It's like everything's great and it's all apple pie and sunshine. But I think what you did for me was something even better, because you gave me the ability to acknowledge my own red flags and you gave me the tools to deal with those. So yeah, those creeping sensations of like binge eating or body dysmorphia, they sneak up, but now I'm just like, I'm so much more equipped for those things and I handle it. And now I've been able to separate my mental health from what is actually happening to me physically, because I was in such an anxious and terrible place. I was like, this has to all be mental health related. And then when my mental health got better and I was still dealing with some physical stuff, I was like, oh, I should go see a doctor about this. And it doesn't feel like I'm crazy. You know what I mean? And it was like, lo and behold, like blood work came back and I was dealing with some hypothyroid stuff. And my doctor was like, yeah, you're not doing great. Like, let's help you out. And then, so being able to attack, like maybe attack isn't the right word, but yeah, being able to attack your bullshit from multiple angles is it's a really good gift. And it's nice to be able to do to this day.
I'm so proud of you. I wasn't aware of how you were doing with some of that stuff that you wanted to work with. And so obviously I'm not going to bring it up to respect your privacy. And at the same time, like, it feels so good for me to see you grow through that, because you really worked your ass off at personal growth and development. And I think that you had to work through that stuff to shift your life the way that you did.
Yeah.
Yeah. You went through this huge internal transformation that I see is carrying you through. Like, you look amazing. Your energy is awesome. Your confidence is like, it's glowing. And I'm curious, as a result of that, how much of that do you think is connected to all the amazing things that are happening in your life? Which, by the way, please tell us all the amazing things that are happening in your life now that weren't happening 2 years ago.
Well, my business is up and running, which is super exciting. And I quit my day job. So
Woo!
That was really cool. Yeah.
That was huge for you because you liked that work. You're one of those rare people that liked it.
Yeah, I loved my day job. And what's cool now is I do it the other way around. So I'm able to make more money as a photographer now and being an entrepreneur, but I still do sports medicine at events that I'm really passionate about. So I still work a lot of martial arts events. I just worked this really cool Brazilian jiu-jitsu event in Orlando. I want to get more into action sports and stuff. So I get to still do it and I get to keep up my certification and my licensure, but I get to be creative and work for myself every day, which is fantastic. Yeah. I got engaged in August. I'd like to say that like I'm the reason that happened, but like he did it. So I mean, like
he did it. I'm not gonna say that I didn't have any sort of influence over that. There was some conversations, but nonetheless.
No, you'll get a care package after the wedding for sure. Yeah. Big thank you. I actually was dealing with the death of my grandmother when we started working together, and the house that we just bought is actually her house that I grew up in as a child. And it was super cleansing. And like, I'm even getting a little emotional to think about it now. And it feels so good and healthy to be here, and doing all of that deep work brought to light what was important to me and what was important to my partner and I. And, you know, we did a lot of examining. So moved from North Carolina to Florida. Now we're here. Bought this house.
Huge.
Yeah.
I mean, I just want to highlight this because it's actually huge, Jackie. Like, this is your life and you've been in it for a while, but making the decision to leave a career, you're dealing with grief, to make a decision to say yes to marry someone, to move to a different state, and to buy a house. Those are 5 major life events that have happened for you in a year.
Yeah.
Huge.
It's crazy. Absolutely. Yeah.
And to be thriving in your business. I didn't even include that. And to be thriving in your business and the career that you want.
Absolutely. And everything is still very much a work in progress. And I love that. But something that I kind of realized the other day is when I felt like one of the best versions of myself was probably when I was like early 20s and stuff, and I was competing and I was goal oriented and I was going to school plus working 30 hours a week, and I was just driven and I was like, I'm going to accomplish whatever. I was confident. I was like the most authentic version of myself. And like life happens to people, right? And of course you still grow and you move through that, but doing the work with you and like getting back to that, I realized that I am back to that version of myself, but like a more elevated version of that also, like less cocky, like more zen, more down to earth, like more understanding of people. Like I was a brick wall, but I got shit done and I was pretty cool. Now I'm like more of a teddy bear, but I still get shit done and I'm pretty cool. So it's nice.
Yeah.
It's like a good blend. Yeah. But it was like, I think I just felt really lost for a few years of my life, and very much I knew what was important to me, but I didn't know how to get it. And I knew what was important to me, and I felt like I was doing the opposite of all those things. And new things were becoming important to me, like rest and self-love and self-care, but it felt like laziness. So I had to really kind of like this new version of myself. It was like Arabic and I was stuck with it, but I didn't know how to read any of it, and I just, I had a translating tool, which was Kara, and that was super helpful. And I feel much more comfortable in my skin and much more capable of handling my current issues. And I notice all the time things that used to trigger the hell out of me. I'm just like, oh, look at you being upset about that, and I can choose to react to it the way I want to now, which is
I'm so
really,
happy.
really nice.
I love it for so many reasons. And really, Jackie, like the thing that I always say, just speaking from a very selfish place at the moment, is that in order to help somebody have the success that they want, it really is an inside job. And the goal isn't to, create clients that are with me forever. My goal isn't to, become a millionaire and educate people, but not give them the actual change that they need. And your story for me is so close to my heart because you're an example of really going through hard shit, going and dealing with really hard shit, fully changing, choosing to change your mindset, choosing to change your beliefs, and developing the skills. So you really exemplified this idea that with the right beliefs and with the right skills, you can get the things that you want.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And it makes me so like I get like electric energy inside. You can't say the words. To see that after this time where we haven't really talked at all. I mean, the pandemic has been tough. Everybody's life has been sort of turned upside down, but to come back and see and hear that you're doing all of these amazing things that you've accomplished. Like what the other thing I love about what you're doing right now is I listed all of your accomplishments. I mean, you've had 6 major accomplishments, the least of which we've talked about being your business. The real transformation has been from the inside for you.
Yeah. I think we started working together with the idea that you were going to help me with my business, like starting out, like, okay, what is it that you want to do? And I was like, well, I could start my own sports medicine clinic. I could start my own event medicine stuff. I could do this. I could do that. I really like photography. And you were like, well, that's not gonna work.
Too many.
You can't do, like, which one do you want to do? And then it was just kind of like, oh, by the way, had a panic attack today. Oh, this happened. Like, I can't stop binging and purging, like this and that. And it slowly became something where it was just like, we need to just dive really deep and go into this before we even touch business. And I think we literally started working on business stuff like the last month we were working together, and it was the best way to go about things, because now I am in a business partnership with my mom. Actually, we work together, and that's really great. Has its own challenges, her being family and stuff, but now I'm much better equipped to deal with it, and I know what I want my business to look like, and she's on board with it, and she likes what I bring to the table as far as being like, that doesn't seem on brand. Or when I stand up for myself and I say that client is not what we want, and like turning down business. And she's, an older generation, the generation all about like pleasing your customer, and the customer is always right. And I'm like, no, like, we are the expert. We can be polite and courteous and help them, but I'm not going to work with my unideal client. I'm not going to work with people who are going to make me do less quality work than I would if I was working with an ideal client.
Yep.
So I think that even though it was like a little bit that we worked on, that was huge for me, because I was taught by those people that believed that the client was always right and the customer was always right, and you needed to do what was right for them. But then I was like, so now, I'm like, hey, this person can't be late for 45 days. Like, they can't like not make a payment for that long. We need to stand up for ourselves and like have boundaries that are good for us. And we need to have like business plans set in place for these situations. And it feels good to be able to help her with that too, because she stresses herself out. And I'm just like, okay, let's not work with this person anymore. If they stress us out every time we work with them, let's not do that. And that's definitely something that you taught me and that we went over when we were designing my ideal client and things like that. So that's been a huge help.
That's amazing. I'm so happy to hear it. And at the end of the day, what we really want is your entrepreneurial journey to be supported by a strong mindset and strong foundation. And I'm so happy to hear that things are going extraordinarily well for you.
So good. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, last question I have for you is, for anybody who's watching this and that's thinking about working with me and the team and is maybe on the fence, what would you say to them?
I would say, especially because you work with a lot of high performers, the phrase ready is a lie. Like, you're never going to be 100% where you want to be. You never are going to have like all your stuff worked out before you start something. In my opinion, when I came to Kara, like I was just saying, I was so scattered and everywhere, and it's her talent and her job to be like, this is where we're going to start, and like let someone else guide you to that. Like, I know you're a high performer, but you don't have to like have a color coded file folder for the team ready to go before you start working with them, which is maybe something that like my partner did for you guys to be, his file folder was color coded, but it's just, when you take the jump, don't be nervous about letting go of control, because I think that that's when the magic really happens, is opening up your mind and your heart to something that's different. Because if you're here, then clearly something isn't working necessarily the way you want it to. So sometimes you just got to roll the dice and try something completely different. And greater the risk, the greater the reward, right? Or the greater the resistance, the greater the reward. There it is. Yeah.